This episode is brought to you by Groove Washer, the best record cleaners and protective sleeves for your vinyl collection. Ask for the Groove Washer from your local shop or go to groovewasher.com. Discount code VinylGuide10. And now, on with the show.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Nate. Welcome to episode 412 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And this week, I'm absolutely delighted to share we have as a guest on the show Mr. Peter Hook, discussing his time with and the records and recordings of Joy Division, including talking about the ultra rare and ideal for living band financed single. We talk about album art, including the extraordinarily popular Unknown Pleasures cover image. We talk about the days after Ian Curtis's passing, what the band was doing, what's up with the Joy Division master tapes. We get into that. We even talk about the infamous Sex Pistols Manchester shows, which Peter saw, and a whole lot more. Now, look, I've always wanted to get Hooky on the show, and we finally got it done, and man, he does not disappoint. I think you guys will absolutely love this conversation. Now, I'm pleased to share Peter Hook and the Light are heading to Australia and New Zealand, playing both Substance albums of Joy Division and New Order sequentially and in full. Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. Reserve your tickets now before they're gone. Go to metropolistouring.com for dates and details. And finally, I want to welcome all newbies to the show. Thank you for giving the Vinyl Guide podcast a listen. We certainly hope you enjoy your time here and that you'll follow for free in your podcast app, because we've got over 400 episodes and interviews ready to enjoy, including Sixto Sugarman Rodriguez, episode 408 of the Vinyl Guide. Mr. Jody Stevens, a Big Star, episode 405. Homer Flynn discusses the rare records of The Residents and more, episode 401. Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr., episode 393. Scott Kirkland of The Crystal Method, episode 368. Gerald V. Casale of Devo, episode 366. Sven Bierge of Royce Cop, episode 364, and literally hundreds more. Subscribe to the Vinyl Guide podcast in your podcast app and enjoy all these episodes for free anytime. And with that, let's get into our conversation with Peter Hook on the rare records and recordings of Joy Division.
Hello.
Hooky.
I'm so sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm surprised you're on your hind legs. Here you're quite ill.
I tested positive for COVID for 3 days, and today it was just faint. So I feel a little better today. So,
okay. Well, you sure you're up to it? You're okay to go?
Yes. There's nothing I like better than talking about bastards. Well, let's go.
Oh, Peter, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. I understand you're coming to Australia in May 2024. Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth. metropolistouring.com is where you get the tickets. New Order and Joy Division's Substance sequentially and in their entirety. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is fascinating to me. Is it true that the New Order Substance album was concocted by factory boss Tony Wilson just so he could listen to the tracks on the CD player in his car?
Yeah, Tony and I had a very nice relationship, and he would always ask me which car he should get. Which car should I get, Hooky? And I'd say on the first time he got a 2.3 16-valve Mercedes. The second time I recommended it, he got a Jaguar 2-door, which was 4.2 litre, which was absolutely beautiful. And I was inspired by Steed of the Avengers for that purchase. When he got it, it had one of those newfangled CD players in it. And he said, you know what? There are very few I can buy, but there is one I want. And we were like, what's that? You know? And he said, I want all your singles on a CD so I can listen to it in my car. And we went, right, whatever. He said, well, can we? And we said, yeah, why not? What? So really, it was the best album we never made, because it went on to sell 3 million of a double in America. It sold fantastically all around the world. And of course, we hadn't done a stroke of work, which appealed to us greatly. The Joy Division one was completely different kettle of fish. It was to clean up Joy Division's legacy, I think it was. And Rob Gretton was very much in charge of that one. Again, the thing with New Order was we never really invested ourselves in these things while we were moving forward. So Rob was happy to do that one. Tony was very happy to do the other one. And of course, the result in sales, we couldn't argue with either, really.
Yeah. Was it painful to put that together? Because it was fairly close to the breakup of the band. Of course, the passing of Ian Curtis. Was the band, I guess, maybe a bit traumatized from that and difficult to revisit those recordings?
No, I'm not particularly. I mean, we revisited the recordings almost immediately after Ian's death so that we could figure out a way of carrying on. We very cleverly buried our grief. So my therapist keeps telling me, she said, you never faced it at the time. And she thinks it reoccurs and fires back probably on all of us all throughout our career, because we never took any time off. We never took any time to grieve. And I think the thing is that sadly, as an older person, you realize how important grieving is, and also what a mark of respect it is as well. So I suppose in a funny way, we were young, we were allowed to get away with it. We just carried on all full of, piss and lager, and buried it quite successfully. So no, we went back to the recordings quite often for ceremony and in a lonely place, and we listened to the old Joy Division jams to get the basis for movement. So I mean, it's one of those funny things, isn't it? Looking back now with the benefit of hindsight, we rushed it. And I think it's because you were young, and, Ian had been cruelly snatched away from you. So you didn't want anything else cruelly snatched away from you. So, we threw ourselves into it, lock, stock and barrel.
So Joy Division Substance, some of the tracks on there were from the original An Ideal for Living single from 1978. As I understand that An Ideal for Living single, 1,000 copies were made. Was that band financed? Was that self-released?
Yes. Yeah. Ian went to the bank and said he wanted some new furniture for his new house and got 600 quid off the bank manager. And it was financed with that £600. Bernard did the sleeve. We got them printed locally. We folded them ourselves, bought the plastic bags, put them all together. I mean, it was Ideal for Living was the best thing ever at that point, and the worst thing, because I went to pick them up when they'd been done from a studio in Oldham in Manchester, and my God, to sit there in my car and look at this achievement that we'd managed after starting from more or less a whim after the Sex Pistols concert to here having our own record ready to go, a great lineup, proper Joy Division lineup. Everything was all go. When I got home and I very feverishly put the first record on and then put the second record on and then the third and realized they sounded like shit because nobody had told us that you can't put that much time on a 7-inch without degrading the quality. We were all heartbroken. And it was only after meeting Rob Gretton and him picking us up by the scruff of our necks that he got the 12-inch done, which sounds wonderful. And then the 7 inches became collector's items. So it's odd. I mean, this business, even now, is all about experience and learning and having mistakes and, falling into pits and things like that. And hopefully what, sorts the chaff out from the wheat, I suppose, is the people that crawl out of those pits. We kept crawling out of those pits and went on to make more and more bigger mistakes with factory.
And deeper pits.
So, yeah, on our mistake trajectory, we were well on course with Ideal for Living. So, yeah, I mean, it has been an absolute pleasure, I must say. While we were together as New Order, before we split up in 2007, we tried to play Joy Division songs. We tried it twice. We did a cancer benefit in Manchester, and then we played it once at a New Order gig. And Barney didn't like it. He said it was miserable. And, in a funny way, I understood what he meant. Probably what he meant, what the miserable thing, I would hope, would be looking back on, Ian and what we had at that time, because what we had now as New Order was completely different. So I did understand why we didn't do it, but I felt, cruelly, again, thwarted. I love Joy Division. I always wanted to play it any chance we get. Me and Steve would play it at rehearsals, sound checks, but never play it live. And yeah, it was a really weird place to be. So to be able to get to play these songs over and over again, for me, as Peter Hook and the Light, is absolutely wonderful.
Oh, well.
I'm scheduling the gigs now that we're doing here in October, and I'm trying to feature the tracks so that everybody can hear them as it is and when it was, off the flexi disc that was with Closer. Trying to feature that in a way that people are there to share this crazy journey with me. The rest of the band didn't want to share that crazy journey, so each to their own. But it's nice that I've found people, particularly in Australia, that are welcome to join me on this trip down memory lane. And I suppose in a funny way, because New Order did so little looking back, 30 years later, 35 years as it was when I began, to get accused of cashing in on playing Joy Division's music was a wonderful contradiction after ignoring it completely for 35 years. So, yeah, it's nice. The whole thing for me is about playing it to people who love it. And I'd like to think that people who love it play it.
Now, does it surprise you that the music you made all those years ago is still so popular and so
not at all. If I listen to, if I look at the record I've got here on my turntable, which is John Cale, Fear, I'm listening to it now. I love it. Every time I hear records like that, I feel great putting them on, the act of putting them on, listening to it. It's just wonderful. It reminds me of something that was wonderful when I first heard it and is wonderful today.
There's no better time machine than a vinyl record.
No, absolutely. The scratches are the bit. I mean, when we did the first gigs, I used to get the keyboard player to play a scratch before we began, and a scratch at the end when we finished. And I always wondered if anybody noticed. Answers on a postcard. I have no idea if anybody noticed. But for me, walking on and hearing that scratch at the end of Trans Europe Express, which was Ian Curtis's favourite track and what he always used to play before we went on, is a wonderful way of maybe going from ignoring the grief to wallowing in it. And wallowing in it by playing it, enjoying what was and what could have been. When I think about Joy Division's next record, the third LP, we already had Ceremony. We already had In a Lonely Place. We'd also written ICB, which became On Movement. There were several other jams that we amalgamated into Movement. The next LP was going to be every bit as good as the first two.
Now knowing Ian passed just before the release of Closer, I think probably a month or two. Did he hear the entire album in sequence? Did he see the package, the cover art?
I honestly don't know, to be honest with you. Once he died and we went through the funeral, we literally put all those keepsakes, including the songs, in a box and shoved it at the back of a wardrobe. And the only thing we talked about was carrying on. Yeah. We went to the inquest on a Thursday, and we all went out for dinner afterwards. And nobody ate much, but Rob Gretton simply said to us, well, what do you want to do, you three? Are you going to go back to work, or are you going to try and carry on? And unanimously, we said we're going to try and carry on. And we were in the practice place the next Monday. I wrote Dreams Never End on Sunday afternoon in my back bedroom at home. So we went in with another track. We had the first New Order track, really, with Dreams Never End. So yeah, I mean, it's weird. I'm blessed that I can sit here and talk to somebody like you that loves music, because obviously I can see that as much as I do. And I count even new songs that I hear, enrich my life. But looking back, it's just something that as an old man, I'm sort of stuck with. I sit here, and whenever I go and do my run or do my yoga, I always think, what should I listen to? And it's like, John Prine, Loudon Wainwright, Led Zeppelin, The Fall. It's like this is one thing I have to say. What I love about Spotify's algorithm is that when the record runs out, it then introduces you to some quite interesting stuff. So, and I have to thank it, for that. I've actually picked up a lot of new music from Spotify's algorithm. If only they paid us, it'd be a perfect world. If only.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath for that. So when you got those 1,000 7-inch singles, and you said they sounded like crap, what was the plan for those records initially? I mean, were you selling them at gigs? Were you giving them away? Like what?
The plan was fulfilled. The idea was we would go around all the record shops in town and ask them to stock them, which, as you can imagine, was about as popular as Thrush. And then we went on to trying to sell them at gigs, £1 each, which we did a few. The pound soon disappeared at the bar. None of us had any money in particular, so it was very useful to keep us going. But once we met Rob Gretton, that's when he came up with a plan, and his plan was to sign the EP to Rabid Records, because he knew the manager of it in Wythenshawe in Manchester. His plan was then to get it recut as a 12-inch, and his other plan was to get us writing non-stop and playing non-stop, which he kept up for 10 years.
So
Rob,
the label of the 7-inch was Enigma. The label of the 12-inch was Anonymous?
Yeah, I mean, it was just us being daft. Rob told us off about the Nazi images, even though there was nothing in our mind in any way, shape or form that was political. It was just stupid. And he told us off for that. And I think that that's probably what led to the Anonymous. Don't be a dick.
Okay.
Let the music speak and be anonymous. Rob was very, very forthright in his opinion at that time. And even though he was only 2 years older than us, he certainly acted a lot more mature from a business point of view. He certainly had a different way of looking at life. So the plan was, came to fruition. The records didn't sell until we were starting to we went from being a bit of a cult band, and then just as we were starting to get a wider audience, the records were flying out 7 inches, and of course it was all nipped in the bud by the very sad event of Ian Curtis's suicide.
Now, it says on the 7-inch, up until the recording date of the EP, we were known as Warsaw. And I think we're familiar, the band was Warsaw, changed the name to Joy Division. Was it literally on the date of the recording of the EP that changeover happened? No,
we became Joy Division on the 1st of January 1978, when we played our first gig at Pips as Joy Division.
Okay.
A mini riot.
Yeah.
Ian got thrown out. It's all in my Joy Division book. That was the first day we were Joy Division, was that day. So, I mean, it was hard work. I can't stress how hard it was in those days to carry on, and how much work everybody, had to put in. But it's weird. Like I keep saying, sometimes I can't believe that I'm sat here in, 2023 talking about this now after that massive gap where we never talked about it. It's really surreal. But, Joy Division was lovely in that it finished when Ian died, quite rightly. We all made a pact that if one member left, the group would not carry on, and we stuck to that pact. We also made that pact in New Order, but obviously some people forgot. So yeah, it's strange. I'm very glad. I'm very happy that I knew Ian. I'm deliriously grateful for the gift that he gave me, which has enabled me to do all the things and have the wonderful life. And probably my only regret of it all is that he didn't get to have that life. Didn't get to see his child grow up. Missed out on all those wonderful, wonderful things that at that age we knew nothing about, But that's life.
Yeah. Now, the next recording I believe Joy Division was on was Fact 2, a factory sample compilation, the record. Where Joy Division, it has two A-sides, and that's also part of Substance, which we're going to be hearing in Australia when you come down, the Digital and Glass, I believe. Tell me your recollections of making that single.
We'll be back after these messages. There's no doubt about it. Record collecting has become a serious hobby and even an investment for many around the world. So record collectors have to ask themselves how best to protect their prized records and confidently buy and sell with others. There is an option to consider: vintage media grading at vmgvinyl.com. vmgvinyl.com will professionally grade your record and encase it in protective plastic, so your record will retain its value for decades to come. This is the same approach that comic book and sports card collectors have done for years. Now, I know many record collectors will be horrified with the thought of having their records graded and encased in plastic. And for the majority of records, this isn't necessary. But if you have top dollar records that you need to protect, maybe a super rare album that's languishing on the shelf, a one-off misprint, or a special LP that you want to protect, look up vmgvinyl.com, Vintage Media Grading, and see if this service is right for you. That's Vintage Media Grading, vmgvinyl.com.
Hey everyone, I'm here to talk to you about Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips. Ever find a record in a used bin where the vinyl is gorgeous, but the sleeve has this ugly split and is even falling completely apart? Well, that's okay. Grab it anyway, because with Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips, you can fix that right up. Seems Easy record repair strips repair seam splits from the inside, so it doesn't affect the appearance of a record sleeve, but it does make it functional again. With Seems Easy, records can now slide in and out like new. Turn a $5 record into a $25 functioning collectible. Just ask your local record shop for Seems Easy strips, and if they're not in stock, go to seamseasy.com. That's Seems Easy with 2 Z's. Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips. Seems easy because it is. Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
Now we return to the program, already in progress.
No limits.
Now, the next recording I believe Joy Division was on was Fact 2, a factory sample compilation, the record. It has two A-sides, Digital and Glass. Tell me your recollections of making that single.
Yeah, there's a slight confusion there. Digital and Glass were actually Factory's first record that were recorded with Martin Hannett when we first went over to Factory. Earcom, the one you're talking about, was for Fast Records, and it was 2 tracks that were left over. What happened was when we got in the studio with Martin Hannett said, "You boys, you've not got enough tracks. And we were like, oh my God, you cheeky bastard, telling us we're not ready. Da-di-da. I had a big, whoa, you know, it's a proper, he was a catalyst, that man. And he told us, he said, no, he said, get the fuck in the studio and write 2 new songs. So we were like, oh my God. So Barney really wasn't up for it. And I said to Steve, I said, come on, we were doing a bit of a jam when we were setting up a bass riff that I had in mind. And I said, come on, let's have a go at that. So we did, and it became Candidate. And then we had to go another jam, which became Auto-Suggestion. And to my mind, turned out to be 2 great tracks, which Martin Hannett loved Candidate, but wasn't that keen on Auto-Suggestion. So we then had to literally break Barney's arm, and I think you can hear his reluctance on both those tracks. The guitar line is usually just an eek, eek, like that. I was like, that, my God, never was anything so blatant. But yeah, so we had Auto-Suggestion left over, and we used that. I can't remember what the other track on with Auto-Suggestion was, actually. It's escaped me now. But we put them on Earcom for a guy called Bob Last, who had been getting us some gigs up in the north of England and was beginning his record label. And Rob Gretton said, you need to help as many people as we can to keep this ball rolling. So we actually did it for him, more or less as a gift. And it became another collector's item, which was wonderful. The next ridiculous project we did was releasing Atmosphere and Dead Souls, which were 2 of our best songs, on Licht Und Blindheit, which was a limited edition 7-inch that came out of France. Wonderful sleeve, absolutely wonderful sleeve. Ian adored it. Ian had the Throbbing Gristle record that they'd done before. So when they asked us, he was over the moon. And we did it for them. It was a limited edition of 1,578 copies, which I believe was the last time the French beat the English in a war. So, it was obviously very tongue-in-cheek from the French record company's part. But yeah, I mean, these things were great to do for the simple reason that we were so prolific in writing. We were writing 1 song a week, at least, sometimes 2. So if anybody asked us to record a song, we were delighted to get them out of the way and move on to the next ones. You know, it's something we even did as New Order in the early days. So it was absolutely wonderful to get these opportunities and end up with these really wacky records, which, to be honest with you, my punk collection was built around wacky records like that. So again, it had that feeling of putting you right, you know, middle and center with punk and with that whole scene. So it was a very, very nice thing to do.
So the band was very hands-on with all the artwork and the packaging, yeah?
Yeah, Rob was quite a perfectionist from that point of view. The band did the first one. I'd have to say from that moment on, if I'm truthful, we didn't really concentrate on the sleeves from that point on. Our main thing and, you know, our main interest was getting the music finished. So, Unknown Pleasures was a design that Bernard stumbled across in an old, I think it was an architect's book or an engineering manual or something. And it was an image of a star imploding. And Bernard must have had it, probably ripped it out. And when we came to do the first LP, he took it to Pete Saville, who inversed it. I think the first copy of that image is blue and white, which is an American manual. The second image of it is in black on white. Saville reversed it. He made it white on black. And that was how we got the Unknown Pleasures motif, if you like, stolen in the true tradition of great LP covers.
Did you have to go back and secure some of the rights for that? Because it became so popular that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't do T-shirts for years. We didn't believe in that kind of self-promotion. We didn't believe in interviews and we didn't believe in merchandise. We were very naive in that respect. So a healthy bootleg. And now my friends in the merchandise industry tell me that Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures has the wonderful the wonderful award for being the most bootleg T-shirt in history, because literally the band didn't start doing T-shirts until the late 90s. So, and everybody, I mean, most of anybody who buys an Unknown Pleasures T-shirt on the internet, I have to say that 9 times out of 10, this guy is not seeing anything. They're all bootlegs. The only place you can buy them real is with Warner Brothers merchandise. So yeah, we were just shit at that. It wasn't part of our interest to do T-shirts. And I remember the guys who were bootlegging us at gigs would come backstage because they felt guilty, trying to give us money and drugs and T-shirts, and Rob would throw them out. You know, so I mean, it was all our own fault. But now it is an iconic image. In fact, the only person that has ever been prosecuted for selling bootleg T-shirts is me, and I was sued by Barney, Steve, Debbie Ian's wife, and Rob Gretton's wife for using the image on my T-shirts for Peter Hook and the Light.
Ah.
Yeah,
oh, goodness. I thought
that's how deep the problems are.
I heard somewhere that Disney had tried to use that design with, incorporating a mouse somehow, and were told
they did
cease and desist.
They did, and I must admit that I actually thought it was great at the time and went to great lengths to get one for my daughter. But Disney got very embarrassed because they'd been caught out. Because if you look at Disney's record for stamping on bootleg use, it was exemplary, which was wonderfully expressed in our letter rather to Disney about their unauthorized use of Joy Division's trademark. I mean, we never registered the trademark. After we'd split up in 2007, I spotted that there was no trademark registered for New Order or Joy Division or any associated designs, and I tipped the others off to that in 2008, and we did it together, even though we weren't together as a group. We were getting 25% each of anything to do with New Order, rightly so. And they managed to do a license to themselves and reduced my 25% to 1.25. So anytime anybody buys a New Order T-shirt now, I get 1.25p of the pound, which is better than the bootleggers giving you nothing, I have to say. But I must admit, I didn't expect that it had come from my old bandmates. So yes, it's a very it's
behavior you expect from Disney, but not from your mates.
Well, not from I mean, it's actually quite surprising, and it was an unusual turn of events. I mean, even in all the books I've read about groups, our battle has been one of the bloodiest I've ever read about. So it's very sad. Yeah, it is really sad. When you were together as long as we were, we were together for 31 years as New Order, working together even after the band had split. But yeah, so I mean, I try to do something about it, but unfortunately, I've not got anywhere yet. So.
Do all the original master tapes, multi-track tapes of Joy Division exist, even the ones going back to Ideal for Living?
I sold Ideal for Living master tape when I did my Joy Division auction. All the others still exist. Most of them are with Warner Brothers in a place called Iron Mountain, funnily enough, that's near Birmingham, which is a huge storage. I mean, they've all been transferred to digital, so God knows why they don't sell them for charity. That's what I think should happen with them. What is the point of having them there rotting away when you could auction them for charity and do some good with them? Because you're never going to, you can't keep copying them for another digital, master.
Yeah, but like the reissue in 2014 for Record Store Day, that was from the original master, I guess.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, it was. Well, I mean, the original master burn, because as you do one, because you have to bake it, the tape. When you bake it, the metallic covering glues itself back to the clear plastic. The tape isn't one thing, it's two things. It's a clear plastic with the magnetic material blown on it, and that's what creates the recording. So what happens is that when the tapes get old, especially if they're badly looked after, the metal lifts off the clear backing. So you have to just melt it gently so that the glue reattaches, and hope that there's not going to be too much damage or any dropouts. I mean, the great thing, one thing you give AI is that if you have a problem like that, a bit of tape missing on a multi-track, you can copy it and AI will recreate the bloody thing for you.
Is there any music missing from any master tapes, any recordings of Joy Division?
I've got some jams of Joy Division that the band refused to let me sell, even though we had no communication between us. I wanted to get rid of them, and God knows why they just didn't buy them. I don't know why. Steve Morris has got some. I've heard he's using a sample on some project he's doing with Peter Saville. So there are some about. I stumbled across one the other day, actually, which was quite interesting.
And those tapes are all backed up and safely...
They are digitized, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ian's child still receives a portion of Joy Division music and publishing?
We gave her publishing on the tracks that we did for Control as a gesture, because the publishing goes to his wife.
Okay.
So I don't know what happens between them, but his publishing. He died interstate. He had no will, so everything went to his wife. So I would hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we gave his guitar, which she auctioned, which I was quite happy about. I hope she buys a house.
That's the Vox that they had in the museum. Yeah. Oh, okay. Do you have any mementos, anything? I've got a friend of mine who he was friends with Bon Scott, and Bon left a few things at his house. And of course, Bon never came back to Australia. So he's got a bag of clothing and just different things of Bon's. Do you have anything like that from Ian's?
No, after the legal battle, I must say that I was very pissed off with both bands. And I actually did 2 auctions and got rid of everything that I had. Everything. It was wonderful to see, and the catalogue is a beauty to behold. But they were just rotting away in my lockup, which seemed really stupid to me. And the only thing I've got now is the 2 things I kept are here on my wall. You can't see them. I can't move the computer. It's a lovely wire on black felt image that a fan did for me of Unknown Pleasures, which is gorgeous. And underneath it is an oil painting of Ian, done by a friend of mine, Ant Mulrain. And I see them both every morning. And to be honest with you, that's enough.
Yeah.
And so, I'm happy with what I've got. I mean, I've still got loads of shit left. Every time I get rid of it, it just seems to grow again, So, I mean, I am, like Bill Wyman, one of those ridiculous bass player collectors that every time I see something, I mean, I'm even seeing stuff that I've sold and actually literally seriously contemplating buying it back. And until my wife gives me a clout round the head and goes, "Don't be so bloody stupid, you got rid of it in the first place." It's like, oh God, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's ingrained in me right from the very first moment that, I saved the first ticket stub when I went to see, oh God, who would it be? Bloody hell.
Do you still have the ticket stub from the Sex? Do you still have the ticket stub from the Sex Pistols?
I sold that. I had it.
Okay.
Yeah, I sold that. Funnily enough, I didn't have my second one, which was weird. The second ticket, I suspected I had something that was it, but it was just a ticket that they gave out on the night, from a role like you get in a cloakroom.
Right.
So it was only Pete Saville and Howard Devoto that did the individual numbered tickets for the first gig. And I you know what? I'd love to know why they did that. Instead of using a roll, I'd love to know why they decided to individually do them. It's like they knew all this memorabilia stuff would be worth a lot of money someday. So they gave you, for me, that was my first bit of memorabilia to do with punk and to do with Joy Division, I suppose you'd say, was that ticket that Pete Shelley sold. Oh, actually, Malcolm McLaren sold me on the door as I walked into the gig.
What led you to go see the Sex Pistols that night?
I was in a really boring job at Manchester Town Hall, and I used to devour the music press, devour it, cover to cover. It was all I did all day in work. I managed to get my work out of the way in an hour, and then the other 7 hours I'd be sat reading the music press. I used to wait for it to be delivered to the shop opposite. I'd be watching out the window of the Town Hall. When it was delivered, I'd run out and get it. Sounds, Melody Maker, NME. I started to read about the Sex Pistols and about this new thing called punk. And the interesting thing from my point of view at that time, I'd been to see Led Zeppelin, I'd been to see Deep Purple, I'd been to see, most bands of that era. And they were great, but I never felt involved. I never felt like I could do it. When I read about the Sex Pistols, I read about them having a fight at every gig. I thought, wow, that's like real life, that. It's like us going out. We go out on a Friday night. It always ends in a fight. I thought, this is weird. That feels quite, normal. So anyway, when they came, I'd been on holiday down Cornwall for 2 weeks, and I was reading the paper in Cornwall. I took it with me to Cornwall, and I spotted an advert for the Sex Pistols, 50p, in the classifieds at the Lesser Free Trade Hall. And I phoned Barney up when I got back from holiday and said, that band I was telling you about is on at the Lesser Free Trade Hall. It's only 50p. We should go. So me, him, my best friend, Terry Mason, and Barney's wife-to-be, Sue, went to see the Sex Pistols that night. And we met outside the Free Trade Hall in Manchester. We went in, Malcolm McLaren gave us our tickets, all dressed in leather, with a big shock of red hair, which was like, wow, this is weird. We went in, and it was a seated venue. I'd been to that venue before, actually, because of the Town Hall Christmas dues were in that venue. So I knew the venue. We watched the support band, who did a 25-minute cover version of Mountain by Nantucket Sleigh Ride by Mountain. Played it in its entirety. Maybe that was what gave me the seed. There was nothing extraordinary. It was a heavy metal band. They came, they shook their heads, they went off. The Sex Pistols came on, and what happened then was extraordinary. The sound was dreadful. Johnny Rotten was screaming. They didn't seem like they could play. It was the most obscene, wonderful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I thought, fuck, I could do that.
That's for me.
Do that. I could tell everyone to fuck off. I could do it. And yeah, that was it. On the way out, I said to Barney, I said, we need to form a group. We need to form a group. We should be punks. And he said, well, I've got a guitar. You go and buy a guitar tomorrow. And that was what I did. I borrowed 35 quid off my mum and went to town and walked in and asked. Barney told me to get a bass guitar. You get a bass guitar. And I went, right. And I walked in and I said to the guy, can I have a bass guitar? And he went, well, which one? Don't know. And he went, well, what about this one? And I went, no, that's only got 4 strings. My mate's has got 6. And he said, no. He said, your mate's got a guitar, knobhead. This is a bass. And I went, I'll have it then. How much is it? And he said 30 quid. And it was a copy of a Gibson EB01 by Echo, really cheap. It was horrible. I didn't know at the time. He said, do you want a case? And I went, yeah, how much are they? And he said £5 for the case. And I had £5 left. And if I'd bought the case, I would have had to walk home, which was 20 miles, 25 miles.
Mm.
And I thought, I can't do that. Got to be in work tomorrow. So I said, no. He said, yeah. He said, I'll get you something to put it in. And he went and got me 2 black bin liners, put the guitar in one and shoved the back bin liner over the other. And black bin liner, I was just like, yeah. And I remember looking at the guitar headstock between my legs all the way home on the bus. And I was so excited. And I went in to see my parents and they both burst out laughing. And my dad said to me, you bloody idiot, what the fucking hell are you going to do with that? And little did I know. I wish he'd been around to see it, to be honest. God bless him. Now, so it's pretty typical, pretty typical start. The next day, Barney and I convened at his grand's, started playing the guitar. We bought a book, How to Play, which lasted about 2 minutes because it was so boring. We just thrashed it out and we just listened to John Peel and heard a band, and then we'd just go, right, let's do one like that. And that was how we began. Yeah, we got thrown out of his grand's for blowing up a record player. Yeah, heady days. Yeah.
Now, about 2 weeks later, the Sex Pistols came back, and I hear that the hall was just packed to the rafters at that point. Were you guys telling your friends about this band, this experience you saw?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of that. Also, the Sex Pistols brought a coach of the Bromley contingent down with them. So they brought 50, 60 people down with them. The Slaughter and the Dogs, who were another band that had formed after the first gig, supported the Sex Pistols. And I remember Malcolm McLaren must have learned a lesson that day because he asked their manager to print up the posters and he'd give him the money when he came to Manchester. And he did that. Slaughter and the Dogs manager printed up the posters and put Slaughter and the Dogs headline. Like Sex Pistols underneath. So which caused no end of trouble when they arrived. And then, of course, because they had all these Cockneys with them, there was fighting all night. It was a completely different atmosphere. But again, it was very raucous. They were extremely loud, distorted, angry, anarchistic. We just loved it. It was literally like someone had opened a door in a darkened room and you'd just seen the light. It was just like that. Go to the light. And yeah, my life in those 2 weeks changed forever.
They said that's the week that the atom split for punk rock. I think Pete Shelley said that.
Down, in Manchester. There were literally about 40 people the first time. All hippies, like we all were at that time. And everybody was completely bemused. Absolutely. We'd never seen anything like it. Nobody had. When we saw Sex Pistols on Top of the Pops, when Tony Wilson put them on, not Top of the Pops, on Granada TV, when Tony put them on doing Anarchy live with Jordan, the one that's on YouTube, my God, I thought all my Christmases had come at once. My father went berserk, tried to turn it off. Unbelievable. Yeah, fantastic. What a moment. These are great moments for me musically.
Yeah. Did your parents ever get to see you play live with Joy Division or?
No, my father never came. He was my stepfather. He wasn't really interested. My mother came once and she didn't enjoy it. God bless her. God rest her soul. Wonderful woman. She gave me everything she possibly could all her life. She was amazing. It was so nice that I'd got the success to be able to give her something at the end. But no, she wasn't interested. She watched us on Top of the Pops. And when I went home, like the conquering general, she gave me a crack round the ear and said, how could you chew on Top of the Pops? All the neighbours will be disgusted. And she didn't speak to me for 2 weeks because I was chewing gum on Top of the Pops. Not the reaction I expected.
So look, Peter, I know you're battling an illness, and I really appreciate your generosity of your
Okay,
time. I've got, before I wrap up, I got one more question for you. Since I know you're a bit of a record nerd, you're a bit of a record collector. Fact 40, the Still compilation. Do you recall what is written in the run-out groove of that record?
Oh my God. Now, we were meticulous as Joy Division and New Order with the run-out grooves for so long. Rob Gretton and I would do them together. Usually we would pick lyrics from forthcoming songs, or what we did with one of them was The Chicken Stops Dancing, was because Ian was watching in Razorhead. And the bit that he used to find really funny was when they put the chicken on the hot plate. Some strange reason. So no, I don't remember it, but I used to have great fun.
Well, you're very close. The chicken won't stop, and the chicken stops here. Those are the which was to do with us carrying on and then hoping that Still would be the end of our looks back at Joy Division, I suppose you'd say. Yeah, I mean, we used to have, wow, when I think about it now, we used to have such great fun. Peter Hook and the Light, May 2024, metropolistouring.com, Adelaide, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth. We really look forward to having you here. Please rest up, get well soon, and we'll see you in the new year, mate.
Take care, bye-bye.
Oh, man, what a delightful dude. I welcome him back anytime. We could have probably gone for another hour. Boy, he's got a lot of energy. Love the way he tells those stories. Peter Hook and the Light, coming to Australia, New Zealand, metropolistouring.com. Check out the dates and details and grab the tickets before they're gone. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron of the show. Patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. Help support the show for $5 or $10 a month. We throw a bunch of extra stuff up there, including commercial-free episodes, high-resolution audio files, extended episodes, and more. That's patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. And thank you in advance for supporting the show. We'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.